What's cracking, Capital City Baptist Church, and any visitors who happen to click on today's video? Just want to say welcome. Thank you so much for joining us, and you're pretty awesome. I know that for a fact. My name is Scott, and I am here with your daily Devo. Fall is nearly upon us, and when I think fall, I think pumpkin spice. And by the way, pumpkin spice lattes are now available at a coffee shop near you. I am super stoked. Haven't had one yet myself, but I did deliver one on DoorDash a few days ago. I'm still watching my drinkable calories, so we'll see if I can make it into Starbucks to snag one of those delicious pumpkin-y goodness lattes. Mm-hmm. Anyway, when I think of fall, I think of pumpkin spice, I think of chilly weather, of sweaters, and I also think of, for some reason, cheesy Hallmark movies. Now I'm going to level with you. As basic as I am with my pumpkin spice latte addiction, I am not basic enough to sit around and watch Hallmark movies with my pumpkin spice lattes. But my mom is. She loves Hallmark. She'll be watching a Hallmark movie when I leave the house in the morning. I'll drive around, run errands, go to meetings, do whatever it is I do. And then I'll come back in the evening, and guess what? She is still there watching another Hallmark movie, sitting in the same spot, actually. And if you've seen one Hallmark movie, you've seen them all, right? Girl meets boy, boy is kind of a jerk, or he dies, or is somehow removed from the picture, and this rich, charming guy comes out of nowhere to her rescue and marries her, and they live happily ever after. Now, men, please stick around, because we are going to be looking at a story that is the original Hallmark movie. It is the BC version of a Hallmark movie. And I promise, guys, it's not as bad as you think. It's actually a pretty cool story. And sort of, kind of, for lack of a better word, a prophetic allegory to what Christ does for us. So do me a favor, read Ruth chapter 1. It's not very long, and we'll dive right in. And if you don't have a Bible handy, we will try our best to put a link in the description box to Bible Gateway, Ruth chapter 1. And you can read it there as well. By the way, Bible Gateway is a really cool resource. If you haven't heard of it, if you pay like $3 or $4 a month, you get access to a ton of different commentaries and study Bibles and notes and atlases and just a ton of study resources for all your Bible study needs. So go ahead and pause the video here, and we'll see you in a little bit. Well, I trust that you read the first chapter of Ruth, and now if you don't like cheesy romance movies and you also don't like history, boy, are you going to have a rough next few minutes, because we should probably talk about the historical considerations when we approach the book of Ruth. This story takes place during the time of the Judges, which is another book of the Bible that describes the chaotic time in Israel's history where there was no centralized seat of power or government in Israel. People just did as they saw fit. It describes the very cyclical nature of sin, not just on the personal level, but also how sin affects us generationally. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. We're not talking about Judges. We're talking about Ruth. And this is also a period of time in which scholars refer to as the Bronze Age collapse. The Bronze Age had some pretty sophisticated geopolitical alliances and trade networks, and for some reason, it just it collapsed. This can be attributed to a series of famines. There was some political upheaval in Greece at the time, as well as this invading horde of sea peoples. And then many people think that this is where the Philistines came from, or at least they came from as a group, a part of the sea peoples. And you thought 2020 was bad. This is a rough time in human history, so we shouldn't be surprised that our homeboy Elimelech decided to uproot his family when a time of famine hit in search of greener passage in the country of Moab. By the way, Moab and Israel, they kind of have a spotty history, so not the best move, but okay. Well, it didn't work out for him or his sons, effectively leaving Naomi and her two daughter in laws as widows. This is not a good time in human history to be a widow either. Women could not own property really. They couldn't really just go get a job. There was no pulling themselves up by their bootstraps. They were really limited in how they could provide for themselves and in what rights they actually enjoyed very little of, by the way. There was no food stamps or welfare of any kind. There were no social safety nets for widows or orphans or the vulnerable, really. A woman was completely dependent on her husband to provide for her needs, and if something happened to her husbands, then her sons would then take up the mantle to provide for her. Now here she is with a dead husband and two dead sons. Her retirement package just got flushed down the tubes. Not only does she have to grieve the loss of the man that she loves and the children she raised, but she also is burdened with figuring out how in the heck she's going to eat and keep a roof over her head. A widow during this time had three options, really. Sell yourself into slavery, not a great option. Take up a career in prostitution, even less of a better option. Or you could just succumb to your misfortune and die of starvation. Looks pretty bleak. Now, this isn't to say that there is no safety nets for the down and out. God has a soft place in his heart for the vulnerable, and you can see that in these verses that I'll try to list right here. And if you really want to know how God feels about how we should treat the immigrants, the poor, and the vulnerable, you really should probably check out Exodus 22 through 24. It's a good passage to check out. God does not parse words on how he feels when the vulnerable are mistreated. Just saying. Check it out. Now that we know the hardships of widows in the ancient world, we could probably understand why a widow with no family or kin in a foreign land would want to move back to her hometown of Bethlehem. By the way, Bethlehem being her hometown is pretty important foreshadowing. Just keep that tucked away in the back of your head. Her two daughter-in-laws, Ruth and Orpah, are foreign women, and Naomi knows that it would be much better for them to just return to their own people. They still have a chance to be remarried and have kids of their own. Chances of finding a hubby in their own homeland is so much better than back in Israel. Back in Judah, the chances are not great. The men of Israel were not interested in foreign wives. The Bible has a little thing or two to say about that. The women cry it out, and with some extra convincing, Orpah does turn back reluctantly to her own people, which is a smart decision. And she, we see from the text that she did not want to go back. She wanted to stay with Naomi, but her mother-in-law was able to twist her arms. Not so much with Ruth. Ruth knows that even if Naomi is with her own people, yeah, it might be better, but she's not going to have a good time either. It's not going to be easy for her. As a display of complete love and loyalty to her mother-in-law, she will not leave her side. And I want to hone in on verse 16 real quick, if I may. And this is what Naomi says, what Ruth says to Naomi when Naomi tries to get her to turn back. But Ruth replied, "Don't urge me to leave you or turn back from you. Where you go, I will go. And where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and your God, my God." Now, the first part of that verse sounded pretty familiar. Yeah, you're right. There is a worship song that kind of paraphrases Ruth's words here. But dang, did you hear that? That's crazy. That it's this intense loyalty that Ruth is showing to her mother-in-law. Ruth was willing to go with Naomi to a foreign land, to a people who probably would not accept her. And she would commit to a God that she may or may not know all that much about. This is not a typical conversion experience. And the weird thing about it is that God is not even the subject of this vow that she's making. He's just a part of the package. Even this super small step of faith was enough for God to honor her in a huge way. Arguably, the biggest way that a immigrant widow could be honored in the ancient world, God is going to do that for her for even this smallest step of faith. And we'll learn about that in the coming weeks as well. If you have not accepted Christ into your life and you're wondering how to become a Christian, it starts with just a small step. Acknowledging that you're not perfect, and compared to God's standard of rightness, we all fall short. And then asking God to forgive you, to make you right with Him, to ask Jesus to move into your life and be Lord of your life. And it all starts with just that one small step. And if you would like to learn more about that, please reach out to the church. We'll have a link to our website in the description. You can reach out to us on there. I also want to take a moment just to talk about verses 20 through 21. Here we see just how tragically broken and grieved Naomi is. Now that she is back with her kin, she can finally grieve. She tells the people not to call her Naomi anymore, but Mara, which means bitter. Naomi lost everything. She went away full, and she attributes the Lord to bringing her back empty. Maybe she's questioning the goodness of God like so many of us do when we are faced with hardship. Maybe some of you feel like you left 2019 full and 2020 has left you feeling pretty empty. And maybe you're tempted to also question the goodness of God as well. With a name change, Naomi rooted her identity in her sorrowful circumstances. And we are often tempted to do the same. But God doesn't reprimand her. In fact, He is going to honor her too in much the same way that He honors Ruth. So if you find yourself in this season of life questioning God's goodness and rooting your identity in what you have lost or suffered in 2020, I pray that you would reach out to the church. We would love to come alongside of you and pray with you and minister to you in any way that we can. I also want to encourage you to stick around for the next 3 weeks or so as we see the goodness and faithfulness of God unfolding in the lives of Ruth and Naomi. Well, I hope that you have been blessed by today's Devo. Have an amazing week, church fam.